All right, so picture this. You're at the Super Bowl party.
Yeah.
It's 2004, halftime show's on. You're all gathered around the TV,
Right.
expecting, big spectacle.
Mm-hmm.
But then, what happens becomes like this huge controversial moment in television history.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking about Janet Jackson and Justin Timberlake.
Of course.
That whole wardrobe malfunction thing.
I mean, it was so quick, right? Like 916ths of a second.
Yeah. Crazy how something so short can have, like, years of repercussions.
Totally. And it's fascinating how this went way beyond just a scandal. It
Yeah.
really was like a catalyst for this huge shift in how we censor things in the media.
Like a total turning point.
Exactly.
So we're going to do a deep dive into this whole thing.
Okay.
We've got some excerpts from the You're Wrong About podcast.
Oh, cool.
We want to unpack not just what happened on stage,
Right.
but also, like, the impact on Janet Jackson's career,
Mm-hmm.
the FCC becoming, like, the smut police,
Yeah. Yeah.
and just how we even watch entertainment now because of it.
It's wild how one event can do all that.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
So to really get this, we got to rewind a bit.
Okay.
Before 2004, what did the Super Bowl halftime show even mean?
Well, back then, it was more marching bands, family-friendly stuff.
Totally different vibe than these crazy pop productions.
Oh, yeah, completely. But then 2004 rolls around.
Okay.
CBS wants to grab that younger audience.
Makes sense.
So they go all out with this lineup.
Like, who was there?
Kid Rock, Nelly, P. Diddy, Jessica Simpson.
Wow, the early 2000s all-stars.
Seriously. Like they were trying so hard to be trendy.
And what about that theme they had, Choose or Lose It?
Oh, yeah, that was because it was an election year. So the
right.
idea was to get young people to vote.
Okay.
They even had Tom Cruise and Julia Roberts in this PSA at the beginning.
No way.
Yeah. Telling people to go vote. And then moments later, you got Jessica Simpson like, choose to party.
Uh-huh. That's a little mixed messaging, wouldn't you say?
A little bit, yeah. Sign of the times, I guess.
For sure. Yeah. But let's be real. Everyone remembers that last act with Janet and Justin.
Oh, absolutely.
Which actually wasn't even the original plan, right?
No, Janet was supposed to be solo.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but they brought Timberlake in last minute for that Rock Your Body finale.
Which, looking back, that song choice...
Kind of foreshadowing, huh?
A little bit. And then boom, the wardrobe malfunction.
But even with all the replays and analysis, it's still so murky.
Right. Like, what actually happened?
Well, you've got the network saying they're blindsided MTV, who produced it, claiming they had no idea. Then there's the stylist saying that nipple ring was custom made.
Wait, what?
Yeah, and then some tailor saying he altered the costume. It's impossible to make sense of it all.
It's like a pop culture mystery novel.
Totally.
You've got Janet first saying it was all her, then years later taking it back on Oprah, and Justice just playing the clueless guy.
Right, right.
I mean, did they plan it? Was it a real accident? Who knows?
We may never know for sure.
But one thing's for sure, the media went nuts. And almost immediately, everyone's blaming Janet.
It was crazy. They called it a peep show,
Oh.
saying she was desperate to save her dying career.
But wasn't she, like, already huge?
Yeah.
Stadium's top of the charts.
Exactly, at the peak of her career.
Yeah.
So that whole desperate for attention thing doesn't add up at all.
Right. It feels like they just wanted to believe the worst about her.
And especially as a woman of color in the industry.
Yeah, there's definitely a double standard there.
For sure.
And to make it worse, it seems like someone powerful was working against her behind the scenes.
Oh, yeah. Years later, stuff leaked that Les Moonves, the head of CBS,
Okay.
he was furious that Janet didn't apologize to him personally.
Wow.
Like, he blacklisted her from the Grammys, messed with media coverage, even messed with her memoir years later.
Seriously. That's kind of scary how one guy's grudge can do that.
That is. And this is where that whole media consolidation thing comes in.
Right, because CBS owned MTV and VH1 too.
Exactly. Moonves basically controlled this massive media empire.
So you could just silence her everywhere.
Pretty much.
That's a little chilling to think about.
It is, for sure. And that wasn't the only lasting consequence either.
Right, this went way beyond just Janet's career.
Oh, yeah. The ripple effects hit all of television.
You're talking about the FCC and how they suddenly cracked down on anything remotely suggestive.
Exactly. Like, overnight, they became the smut police.
So how did that happen?
Well, the FCC works on complaints, right? So the Parents Television Council and these other conservative groups saw their chance.
Okay.
They flooded the FCC with complaints and fines for broadcasters just exploded under the Bush administration.
So one little incident, less than a second long, was used to justify this huge censorship wave.
It does make you wonder if they were just waiting for an excuse, doesn't it?
Totally. Like
Yeah.
it was already in motion.
Yeah, maybe.
So we've talked about the initial fallout, the media frenzy, how unfairly they treated Janet. Les Moonves' role in all this,
Right.
and how this became the excuse for way more TV censorship.
Yeah.
But what about the long game? How does this still affect how we watch stuff today?
That's a great question.
We'll have to dig into that more after the break.
Definitely. I mean, it was immediate. Like shows like ER, even NYPD Blue.
Oh, yeah. Those were always pushing the envelope.
Right. They had to tone it way down, especially the nudity,
Wow.
and get this Fox censored a female orgasm.
What? Seriously?
Yeah, on the OC, they were terrified of those FCC fines.
It's crazy how much self-censorship there was.
Totally. Everyone was scared.
And the most ridiculous one, I think.
Oh, yeah. Tell me.
20 ABC stations wouldn't air Saving Private Ryan uncut on Veterans Day.
Wait, what?
Yeah, they were worried about the language.
You mean the soldiers swearing during D-Day?
Apparently. A little much, don't you think?
It's totally absurd, right?
Yeah.
Like this award-winning war film historical event.
Right.
But too risky because someone might say, damn.
It just shows how over the top things got.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So we've covered a lot here. The media going crazy, blaming Janet, Les Moonves being, Les Moonves.
Yep.
And how this whole thing basically rewrote the rules for what you could show on TV.
Right? It's like everything changed.
It really did.
But like, what about the long-term effects? I mean, how are we still dealing with this today?
That's the big question, isn't it? It was over 20 years ago, but it still feels relevant.
It does. And it's weird because, like, remember that Choose or Lose It theme?
At the halftime show.
Yeah. Like, it was about voting,
Right.
but it also felt like this bigger thing.
Totally, right? Like it was the early 2000s, post 9/11, America was anxious. There was this focus on morals, traditional values.
Like, everyone had to fit in, make the right choices.
Exactly, or else face the consequences.
And Janet's incident, it became like this symbol
of everything wrong with society.
Exactly, like the downfall of morality.
Right, the sexualization of pop culture.
Bad influence on kids.
It was perfect for anyone pushing that conservative agenda.
So she became the scapegoat.
Exactly, and it's classic, right? One event used to justify changing everything.
And often hurting the people who are already being targeted.
Exactly.
It's messed up. But bringing it back to today with social media and all that.
Ooh, that's where things get even more interesting.
Right.
Because on the one hand, it's given everyone a voice, you know?
Right.
You can challenge the big narratives, hold people accountable.
Which is awesome, but
it's also this breeding ground for outrage and mob mentality.
central culture.
Exactly. It's this double-edged sword.
Right. Like, we can speak our minds, but there's always this threat of backlash.
And that fear of being publicly shamed, losing your job,
Yeah.
that didn't just go away after the Super Bowl.
Right. It became part of the culture.
Totally. We're more hesitant to express ourselves freely because who knows what'll happen.
So you're saying this whole incident and the crackdown that followed, it created this fear that goes beyond TV.
Yeah, I think it helped build this self-censorship culture that affects how we communicate today.
That's a little depressing. Like, we traded one kind of censorship for another.
Right. It's not the government or some bigwig telling us what to do.
But it's like this court of public opinion waiting to pounce.
And that line keeps moving,
No.
too.
Yeah, what's okay today might get you canceled tomorrow.
It's tough for creators and for us as viewers.
Definitely. So we need more than just no censorship.
Yeah.
We need like a culture of tolerance.
Right. Being open-minded, willing to hear things that might make us uncomfortable.
Because otherwise we're just afraid to say anything.
Exactly. Or we just stay in our echo chambers where everyone agrees.
And we never actually grow.
That's the danger, right? No open dialogue, no challenging our own ideas.
We just stagnate.
Exactly. So knowing that this incident played a part in all this.
Yeah. How do we fix it? How do we make media more open and tolerant?
Well, I think it starts with awareness. You know,
Okay.
recognizing how this stuff shaped us.
Right.
Seeing the patterns and behaviors that got us here.
Makes sense.
We got to be critical of what we see and hear, ask questions, find different perspectives.
We can't just be passive anymore, right?
No. We have to actively engage, challenge those assumptions.
But how do we do that on a larger scale?
We have to be willing to have those hard conversations.
Yeah.
Talk to people who disagree with us. Right. And actually try to understand them.
Not just yell at them.
Exactly. It's about empathy, realizing we probably have more in common than we think.
So instead of just condemning everyone,
We try to understand.
instead of outraged dialogue.
Exactly. Because if we want a more tolerant society, we have to be more tolerant ourselves.
That's a good point.
Listen, learn, engage with the world and all its messiness.
I like that. And it makes me think about Janet and Justin again.
Okay.
You said earlier Justin kind of got away with it, even though they were both up there.
Yeah,
Why do you think that is?
that's a good question. And I think it shows how gender and power work in Hollywood.
Okay.
Like Justin could play that clueless nice guy.
Right, like it wasn't his fault.
Exactly. And Janet didn't get that benefit of the doubt.
At all.
It shows how society is biased towards men, especially white men.
And against women, especially women of color.
Exactly.
So even though they both did it, the consequences were totally different.
Right. It's a reminder of how societal norms screw things up.
Yeah. And how we see things isn't always objective.
There's always these unconscious biases affecting how we judge things.
Which is why it's so important to be aware of them,
Right.
to question our assumptions.
And fight for fairness and equality.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
It really is amazing how much one little moment can tell us about ourselves. Yeah.
Totally. Our culture, our biases, how power works, it's all right there.
Yeah. But it's not just about pointing fingers.
No.
It's about figuring out how we got here and how to make media better, fairer.
Absolutely. And acknowledging the problem isn't enough.
Right. We need action.
Exactly. We need to actually challenge things and be willing to have those tough conversations.
And speaking of action, you said earlier that Janet did get recognized for her talent eventually.
She did, yeah. Thankfully, people have been reevaluating her legacy.
It's about time.
Right. Recognizing her impact on music, dance, pop culture.
I mean, she's a legend.
And she was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2019.
That's awesome.
It shows how powerful she is, how talented. Totally.
Yeah.
And it shows that we can change the story, even if it's been stuck in our heads for years.
Right. It's a reminder that even when things are tough, resilience and sticking with it can win.
Love that. And it makes me think we should always be questioning what we think we know about the past.
Always.
Yeah.
So much of it is just narrative, someone told us.
Yeah. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm curious about the future.
Of media.
Yeah. With all this stuff we talked about, is there any hope?
I think so. Social media has been a mixed bag,
For sure.
but it's given a voice to people who weren't heard before.
That's true.
Marginalized communities can connect, organized news stories can come out.
So even with all the craziness, there's still good stuff happening.
Exactly. And that's where the hope is,
Yeah.
And the people who won't accept things as they are, who speak truth to power, who fight for everyone to be heard.
It's inspiring.
It is. This has been a great conversation.
I agree. I feel like I understand so much more about this whole Janet Jackson thing.
It's been a pleasure, and thanks to everyone listening.
Yes. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
We hope it's given you some things to think about.
Made you question some things.
And remember, this is just the start.
Keep exploring these ideas.
Challenge your own assumptions.
Use your voice to make things better.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Mm-hmm.
Keep learning, keep questioning, and keep making the world a little bit better.
That's a great note to end on. Thanks again, everyone.
Thanks.